I'd just like to welcome everybody here for this evening, and I will pass to Stig and Christiona for some brief words.
Hello, we'd just like to welcome everybody as well. And before we get started, I would like to acknowledge the elders, both past, present and emerging, of the Eora Nation, on which we, of the lands on which we meet. The only other thing that I really had to say was thank you to Stowe for again coming out and being part of this and spending your time asking the candidates about where you see the Barony and Stowe particularly going in the next few months or years. And to reiterate, at this stage, it looks like that changeover will be the 22nd of October, barring any unfortunate changes, misadventures, what have you.
Okay, and yeah, hello from me as well. This is quite timely after the Stowe event just on the weekend, which was all very good. Okay, I'm just going to run through timeline. We of course are in, this is the final of the Q&A sessions. From the 20th of June to 10th of July, we've got the commentary period. That'll be on a Google form. It'll just be the Majesties in England will have access to that, and a paper copy can be arranged if anybody has a problem with Google Forms. Between 11th to 24th of July, there'll be consideration of the commentary that's received and the announcement of the successful candidates. JC mentioned it before, and I'll just remind everyone again, there's the previous sessions JC has put up, so please feel free to look back at those if you need to further inform your commentary. The need for commentary is real, and if everybody who has an opinion can voice that via that, it will assist their Majesties a great deal in making the decision. Okay, with that, I'll hand over to the candidates and they can introduce themselves. Actually,
just before you do that, I will reiterate, as I said at the event the other night, this is not a vote. This is an opinion finding poll only. Nobody is voting candidates in. Nobody gets first, second, third preferences. What their Majesties want to find out is whether or not you can support candidates. So you may well say that you can support all candidates, no candidates, one candidate. That's entirely up to you. What you won't get is first, second and third and have it as a strict vote. It's not like AEC run votes in Australia. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Your Excellencies. Candidates who are currently with us this evening, does anybody have a burning desire to go first?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we went first last time, Chris, so what say we let Sigvald and Ida go first this time?
Sounds good to me. Sigvald and Ida, you have the floor.
Good evening, everyone. Hello, my name is Sigvald Spethandi. I joined the SCA in about 2011 from the College of St. Ursula. I am currently the Lockhart Rapier Marshal and have held a variety of positions throughout Rowaney and the Kingdom. Event management or event stewarding is a real passion of mine. Everyone here, I think, has been to at least one of the newcomers that I run. And Stowegians among you may recognise us from the Wednesday ANSs we've tried to start coming to, as well as the Stowe Tavernalia, which was very, very fun this weekend, and hopefully see everyone at Winterfest in a few more weeks.
Hi, I'm Ida. I didn't join in 2011, even though Sigvald said we joined in 2011. I joined probably would have been 2015. We both of us joined through the College of St Ursula. I've not run very many events and I don't currently hold any officer positions. I like to help out where I can, helping with setup and pack down of various events and assisting in kitchens where required or where asked, or being a bit more in the background. But yeah, just looking forward to seeing what you guys are finding as a priority for Stowe in the coming periods.
That's us.
Thank you very much. Juliana and Ibn Jalal.
I'm on, okay. Yeah, I'm Ibn Jalal. I started playing up in Dismal Fogs, mumbly years ago. And I've been in Rowanee for the last 20 years, where I basically moved down here to be closer to work. Over the last couple of years, I've had many different officers in the SCA, from a local through to a society level. I originally came in through combat archery, which would surprise some people, and then fell into the fencing when we came back after the ban, and sort of discovered a love for period fencing that I didn't know I had. From there, it was basically, I went on, explored that very heavily, ended up with a Master of the Laurel and a Master of the Defence as a consequence. And then I guess the SCA has given me a lot of opportunities to explore a whole lot of different things. And that's probably one of the reasons I'm still here after decades. Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Juliana, and I've been in this reenactment gig for about 25 years, having joined in another group actually in 1997 as a result of needing to dance for a wedding. I moved to Rowanee in 2008, where I've been here ever since, and I've held a few offices at a local level, but I'm involved in the SCA on a worldwide stage, which I have not actually put in my previous intros, with a lot of, with the Master of Defence. Now I'm dealing with a lot of different Masters of Defence from around the world in a cross-kingdom collaboration. I have a passion for spinning as well. For those of you who actually do know me, I'm a little bit addicted to spindles and spinning wheels. And that's where we were this weekend when everyone else was at Tavernalia. We were off at Great Northern Alternate, or Great Northern Fair, teaching spinning and fencing and finger loop braiding. So there we go. Thank you for having us tonight.
Okay. Thank you to our candidates for those introductions. I have not had anyone send through any questions at this stage. So if there is anyone who does have a question they would like to ask of our candidates, please raise your hand and I will call on you. And yes, I am a school teacher. Hang on, I've just had one come through. In fact, I've had a few come through. So I'll start with, this is a question for all candidates. What was your favorite Stowe event and why would you consider that your favorite? Ibn Jalal and Juliana, sorry. Attention was taken elsewhere for a moment. Looking at you, Malcolm.
I actually don't remember the name of the event, but I do remember the event. I was as crook as a dog. It was an event that Mistress Finn, who was on the line, ran. And I ended up for the next 12 hours in the kitchen doing nothing but dishes and having her feed me. Why was it my favorite event? probably because I was as sick as a dog, stuck in the corner doing dishes. Really weird, but it sticks out.
God, there's been so many. One of the ones for me was, oh God, this is going back a while. It was out at the, I think it's used to be the Naval Reserve, and they turned it into a college out at Seven Hills. And we had archery and fencing and heavy and a feast and everything as a picnic all day. And it was just, there was lots of people there, and it was just a really, really fun event. But that was like, oh God, the map would have been intense. So that was at least 15 years ago. But yeah, it's just, that one was so much fun. It still sticks in the head so much later.
Finn's just put into the chat that might have been an Agincourt day. Okay. Sigvald and Ida, your favorite Stowe event?
So for me, it is not going to be a sort of traditional Stowe event. For me, it was the first Winterfest that I helped at. It was held in Parramatta Park. It was freezing cold. It was raining. It was the first demo sort of exhibition that I'd helped at that wasn't related to the college directly. I think it was Alfgear was Seneschal then. I just remember so much joy in the faces of everyone in the audience every time one of us collapsed to the ground or made a big clang, or someone was obsessing over all these people making all these amazing arts. I love demos, and that was my first one that wasn't part of the college, and that was a Stowe. Winterfest 2015 is probably there. Yeah, I love Winterfest.
It's a good thing we're going to Winterfest.
We are indeed.
I think my favourite Stowe event, I mean, it'll be a bit silly, but it was the one that I can't remember where it was. It would have been 2016 or 2017. And I got my AOA at that event. The food was fantastic. It was just a really nice event. I can't remember anything, really specific, but it just, that obviously that will stand out in my mind as I've got my AOA at that event. So, but I've always had, pleasant experiences at Stowe events. They've always just been really a nice atmosphere.
You're a Western Sydney person.
So. Yeah, I am.
Fastest cannon search in the West. Excuse me. Celebration fit for a Basilius, which was February 2017, which was Ariston and Lilavati's reign. Don't put yourself on mute before you say something, JC. That would be silly. Awesome. Thank you very much to the candidates on that question. On to our next question, and I might give Sigvald and Ida the first bite at this one, just to keep things fair. Similar in vein to one of our questions from last week, which is, what will you be doing to work through the Rowaney versus Stowe attitude that is very strong, especially if something was to occur and Stowe was no longer able to be a separate group as a canton and became a hamlet of Rowaney?
Sorry, JC, just like last week, are we able to get these copied into the chat to be able to read?
Yep, I can do that for you. Yep. You're not going to get my wonderful editorializing, though. Contextualizing, that's probably better than editorializing.
So I think I actually said last week that I found it very odd that there's this divide sort of mentally between Rowaney and Stowe, considering that location-wise, they're not far. Central Rowaney is very close to where Stowe is, and I personally, I grew up in Western Sydney, so when I was attending events in Central Rowaney, it wasn't hard to get there. It's certainly, I can't imagine that it's particularly difficult. There's so much public transport in Sydney. But in this hypothetical scenario, I think I would want to make it clear to people, like, Rowaney attends events in the region that Stowe occupies geographically fairly often. You know, they're Rowaney events that happen to be run in the Stowe sort of spaces because there's, you know, good halls, good areas that those occur in. And I find it I just would like to, you know, make that clear that there's no reason to, if Stowe wasn't able to remain as Stowe, that it would just seem like it should continue just to operate as Rowaney, as it kind of does in some respects. I'm not explaining that very well.
I think that sort of point there is that Rowaney has events in Stowe geographically, Stowe has events in Rowaney geographically. Parramatta is, I think I checked the other day, Parramatta proper is in Rowaney, and just, you know, a few blocks to the left is to the west is Stowe. We spoke about it a bit last week in the sort of build it and they will come, where there are people out there in the SCA, and whether they are holding events and whether they are participating under the Barony of Rowaney or the Canton of Stowe-on-the-Wowlde or the Hamlet of Stowe-on-the-Wowlde, whatever is most, you know, whatever Stowe feels is the best path forward. That's who we would be supporting. It would not be about the title of a group. It'd be about the people in that group.
Thank you very much. Juliana and Ibn Jalal.
We're both in the same sort of boat as Sigvald and Ida, where we don't really understand the animosity that's there, because we've always just considered Stowe to be part of Rowaney. For us, it's been, we just get in the car and we go. And we've done lots of events in the Central Barony, lots of events at Stowe, lots of events all over the place. I do know there's a bunch of Central Rowaney people who live in the inner city, and it's not getting to the event that's the problem, it's getting home that's the problem for them. Public transport after about 10 o'clock from the Stowe regional area is hard if you live in the inner city. So that's where we were talking about floating, basically carpooling for people from the inner city to get out to Stowe, and we can do the same thing from vice versa for people from Stowe who want to get into inner city stuff. So we don't see that as a problem, we just see it as something that needs support to help people get around. Conversely too, it's the language we use. We say, oh, Rowaney's running an event or Stowe's running an event, when it's actually no. Rowaney is running an event, it's being hosted by Stowe, or Rowaney is running an event, it's being hosted by the Central Barony, or Rowaney is hosting an event, it's being hosted by the college. So this is one of the things we would like to encourage, is people to remember it's all one barony, it's just whoever's hosting the event is different. So that's kind of where our thinking sits at the moment, is it's still one barony, it's just who's hosting something.
Yeah, thank you very much for that response. Does anybody have any other questions they would like to ask? Sigvald and Ida have their hand up.
Sorry, I just want something that just while Ibn Jalal was speaking that I just thought of, and I do find it, you were touching on, you know, a Rowaney event hosted by Stowe, a Rowaney event hosted by the college, and I find it very interesting that the way we think about Stowe seems, to me at least, very different to the way we think about the college, whereas we think of the college as like, oh, it's part of Rowaney, you know, are they future Rowanites, you know, we should support them and all of this, blah, blah, blah. whereas Stowe, it feels often a little left out of that, which is really bizarre to me, that that's sort of the way of thinking about it. Whereas, you know, they should be thought about much more similarly in their support and attendance at events and recognition of the importance of the groups. And I just thought that I'd just bring that up because that bothers me a lot.
No, I think that's a fair point to make. Okay. I am going to open the floor to any other questions that people may have for our esteemable candidates tonight. All right, tonight's silly question comes from Malguin, who would like to know if the candidates have a sense of humor. And I already know the answer to this because I've met all of the candidates many a time. Is anyone able to give us the airspeed velocity of an unladen Stowegian swallow?
Is that the African import or the native Australian swallow?
Malguin?
I am just going to let you know that from a distance, over in the kitchen, Mal yelled out, somebody is going to say, is it the African or the European?
Yep, and we also had that in the chat as well. So thank you, Mari, for that.
I've never actually seen an African swallow, but there are a few Stowegians running around here and there. So I thought I'd check and see if anybody's actually measured it.
This sounds like a future baronial project.
9.8 meters per second squared.
Her Excellency states that Stowegian swallows fall out of the sky more so than flying.
Somebody write that down, please.
It's recorded for posterity. May deity of choice have mercy on us all. On to a more serious question.
I would also state, Malguin, though, it would depend on the size of the meatball, how quickly we can swallow it.
Fair call.
See, this is taking me back to a Stowe birthday bash where Guy made sausages. It was Stowe's Sausage Fest. It was great. Moving right along. A question raised by a member recently is, what would the baronial candidates like to see become a common Western Sydney event or occurrence? Sigvald and Ida.
So anyone who knows me knows that I have a history of running and being involved with ruining newcomers events. And one of the real strengths of those events is that it's a sort of pipeline into membership where you have often University of Sydney O Week, you get a bunch of recruitment there. Then you move them into a newcomers feast. And then a few weeks after that, you move them into festival. And if you can complete that pipeline, you've got a really good chance of keeping those people. We know that Winterfest has a huge impact on the recruitment for Stowe. I think Matthias mentioned on the weekend, it was something like 80% of ongoing Stowe membership comes from Winterfest. Something that we've been talking about would really like to see is developing that sort of pipeline for the second half of the year with regard to Stowe and Winterfest. So you've got sort of like Winterfest recruitment, congratulations, you know, look at all the amazing things we can do. 2 or 3 weeks later, come to this amazing blinged up feast that's just ready and waiting to draw you in, where you can have those ANS displays, you can have those tournaments and those classes and show off really what the SCA and Rowan and Stowe is all about. I'd love for that to be to become a sort of institution, whether that be, and Finn mentioned a sort of tavern feast earlier in the year, but having a sort of Western Sydney second newcomers feast after Winterfest would, I think, be a really, really great institution to develop.
It's also something that's very much like, it's great to turn around and say at something like Winterfest, if you're interested, we've got this event coming up, you know, and that keeps it in people's minds rather than just, oh, you know, we've got something every week. But if it's like, we've got this specific event, we showcase all of our stuff.
Big bang.
It's in a month. So, you know, it's not immediately, but it's, you know, it's not too far away. It's in the area. I just feel like that's something that can help keep people interested and actually come and see, you know, what's happening at an event like that.
And you can keep people sort of invested in those weeks between, where you've got the, oh, I can make, you know, costume for this medieval thing. Who do I talk to? And you can sort of have that in between process, which really helps with that as well. Yeah, we think that'll be really fun.
Thank you. Yes, there's some comments about how similar events have run in the past, but I think the focus here is making it a yearly thing, like how Sigvald mentioned, newcomers often, well, is for, you know, incoming Ursulans and other newcomers there. Juliana and Ibn Jalal. So I'll pop sorry, I forgot to put the question into the chat for everybody.
Thank you. This I'd actually already thought about, but not quite so much. It's too close for this year to do it. But I'd already had a thought that we have Winterfest, and there's not, from the perspective that I've seen, the opportunity to capitalize on that. We have the O Week, we have the newcomers leading into festival, but then there's been other events, Winterfest, occasionally Ironfest, where I've seen some people turn up to from Rowaney and Blacktown Medieval Fair, and not a lot of follow-up. So I'd already, just a few weeks ago, already put to JC about some sort of follow-on event from Winterfest. Now it's very, very close, but I also know that Dents Park is in a couple of weeks after this Winterfest. I know it's out of the region, but maybe this is something that we could look at next year, is organising, as Sigvald and Nita have already said, an event to capitalise on those things that we've spoken to the people in the area about. It's a huge thing. Winter Feast, yeah, you know, again, very close in time, but definitely something that we've had a conversation about.
Yeah. But it's also something too, that it doesn't have to be just a feast. You could run it as something like the bunch of classes stuff that we used to run in the Barony. So you've actually got you've got your demo, and then you can say, look, in a couple of weeks, we've got this event going. It's going to be classes during the day. We're going to be teaching a whole bunch of stuff. And then there's a small feast in the evening. We can help. And then that's where the hospit from both groups will come into play. And we can say, look, we can help you with kit on the night to get you there if you're interested in coming along. But it ties into that whole, if you're trying to recruit people, and I'm surprised Winterfest is the main recruiting ground. I thought you would have gotten more out of Blacktown, but it's having something to follow up. It would be a way to go. And you want to do it within probably 4 weeks of Winterfest to actually still capture that enthusiasm.
Yep, it sounds great as ideas there. Possibly related to the last one, is a question about actually, maybe not that one. I don't know if that one's directly relevant to this. This might be a question for essentials actually to talk about. I'll move on. Actually, this one is actually related. Demos are a big part of recruitment. Can you think of other ways that we would want to use to try and attract new people? Juliana and Ibn Jalal.
Again, something I've been putting a bit of thought into. I find public demos to be very, very repetitive. And you say the same thing time after time, day after day, year after year. And one of the things I've noticed from other groups is interactive demos. So rather than just showing a bunch of stuff, getting people to hold a sword, getting little kids to do this and that, something that people can interact with. A common one that I've come across and have done in the past is the ingredients test. So you find a dozen period ingredients, substitute 2 plausible ingredients, and then make a quiz out of it. And then you follow that through with at your event afterwards. You have your feast utilizing some of those ingredients so people can see how they were used. Interaction, things that people can play with, and then they could come along and try that recipe, or they walk away with a recipe, but definitely needs to be interactive and having people try, just try things rather than just being talked at. Did I cover that? Did I get the whole question?
Yeah.
There we go.
The flip side of that too is we probably need to look at the websites for the local groups. They're a little sparse on information. It's written from the perspective of if you're part of the group, you understand what's going on. If you're someone looking in from the outside, it doesn't make sense. So there's no good information there for new people coming in. And we need to get our calendar fixed and up to date. We were trying to work out what was coming up as events this week, and we looked at it and there is nothing in the calendar but the regular stuff for Stowe, which I congratulate you guys for. It's great, but there's nothing from the Barony. There's none of the events we're planning. The Dents Park stuff's not in there that we could see. We need to make it look like we're actually doing stuff instead of just a bunch of people who do stuff occasionally, if we really want to attract people. And we need to also make it clear that there's activities for the whole family, not just for young kids or adults or whatever, because especially out in the western suburbs, it's families are the ones that are getting interested, not the young kids with disposable income like we see in the inner city. So that's a couple of my thoughts.
Sigvold and Ida.
So I think the question, and correct me if I'm wrong, question asker is talking about demos in the sense of Blacktown, Winterfest, those set up a stall at a bigger thing, and what you get from that. I'm assuming that's sort of what we're talking about with demos, which is great. What I'd kind of like to do is a sort of alternative, and this would take a bit of work, and this would be a bit of a project, which is our social media presence external to the groups that we already have is not great. There are other reenactment and LARPing groups that have advertising on social media, and often what they do is advertise that Swordcraft has Quest every quarter, and you see which is an event that's about the size of festival, and you see ads going, come along and try. It would take a fair amount of work, but it's something that we have spoken about in the past, is the idea of the Barony of Rowaney will be hosting a feast and a tournament on this day at this time. You are welcome to come along. And this would be the kind of investment where It's not just a stall and talking at people or, you know, hit the heavy kind of activities. It's you're taking part in the whole thing, where your first exposure to the SCA may be this feast where you've got the whole gamut and we can show off our game and everything we love in the environment that really makes it shine. Because one of the big things that is amazing about the SCA is the sort of narrative and this world that we've built. And you can't really show that off at just a demo, but we can show that off if we invite people to sort of feasts and things. And the other idea which we've been talking about is more mundane events to invite people to. So earlier on, when Dens Park was just sort of starting up, we'd have people wander in and go like, oh, what are you doing here? And I think it was just mentioned in the chat, having workshops and different activities that we can invite people to and then get them in. It's like, you love calligraphy and illumination or fiber crafts or these kind of activities, and then use that as the train to get them into the sort of SCA proper, quote unquote. I think the hard thing to keep in mind, obviously, at the moment is, you know, size restrictions, like venue capacities in this COVID landscape. You know, it would be hard to juggle things like making sure that, you know, there's space for people who are just wandering in versus people who have booked and paid. And like, you know, it will be a bigger project, but like you say, having, you know, that narrative, that theatre, I think is something that a lot of demos you sort of miss out on a little bit. St Ives did it quite well. St Ives has a crown of St Ives, and there was a feast that was attached to it for a few years. Bringing that as a more SCA focus would be a really interesting idea.
Thank you very much. Next question, which also comes to all of the candidates. As I scroll up, because I missed one. Are there any major projects you would look to implement as Baron and Baroness?
Sorry, question for the question, is this sort of Stowe specific or more broadly?
Either or. So think broadly at the moment, but maybe with a Stowe focus. I apologize for breaking anyone's brains there. Ibn Jalal and Juliana.
One of the things that I've seen around going to different baronies, different shires here and in the Crescent Isles is that some of the baronies have got heraldic wall hangings, and damn, they look good. I believe there were some made for Rowaney, but I don't know where they are, and if there are any, you know, does anyone know if they were made? But I would actually like to see if we can find them and update them, because it does look pretty awesome when you walk into a hall and see, you know, 7,500 different, you know, heraldic devices just hanging around the halls, looking spectacular. A lot of nice ideas, and also for those newcomers that come in and see those things on the wall, how do I get my device up on that wall too, to get that heraldry out there, and also that participation as well. So that's something I'd like to do.
And it's also something that we could do, not just for the barony, but we could have like a specific one for Stowe, a specific one for the college, where the college can start having, look at all the people that have come in through the college, and then we've got one for the barony, for the the people that are coming through the barony. So that's certainly something that we could do there. The other one for us is the idea of setting up some sort of process to help people get to stuff, be it within the barony or to events in other groups. Because one of the things we've had experience with this from other groups is traveling to events as a group and doing bookings as a group and setting up all of your transport and accommodation as a group is cheaper than trying to do it on your own. So it's a way of actually lowering that barrier, that cost barrier that people have for an event. So you could actually start going, okay, we're going to be going to this event. If we book out a certain number of rooms at the hotel, we can get a whole lot of people there and we can all have a whole lot of fun. So setting up that concept of having a way for the barony or Stowe to talk to each other and saying, okay, we're going to this event and we want to do something about this. And we want people to join us. That's something that we think would be a worthwhile venture.
Thank you very much. Sigvald and Ida.
So one of the things that I think about over the last little while is sort of back to basics, where we're coming out of a really challenging time for a lot of people. I don't know how many times we've heard that particular phrase, but it's about, for us, rebuilding the sort of core of what we do and who we are and what we have. And it may not be a big project in terms of, a hero cloak or the Rowaney carpet kind of idea, but even simple things like refreshing the regalia for companions and household
God.
and guard and populace badges and rewards and symbols of appreciation that can be visually seen for people that really participate. That's not a big, flashy project, but it's a big project to do. Rebuilding's the wrong word, but encouraging people who are sort of on the periphery back into what we do, where we have offices that are nearing their time and encouraging people and building up that sort of capability and capacity to, what if I could almost do that? What can we do to help you know that you can do that?
Yeah, I think that personal engagement stuff, I think that's very important to the both of us, making sure that people feel like, there are the networks and the support systems and ways of being involved, that maybe it's not the big flashy, standing up at demos and looking fantastic, but it's, that there's a lot of background work that goes on. And I think we want to sort of shore up those foundations. There's a lot of people who have a lot of knowledge and a lot of skills that maybe because they haven't been so many events that they can go to and things that, they can help out with, that might be feeling a bit on the sort of periphery. And if we can sort of shore up those, strong foundations and just sort of help people feel engaged coming out of COVID.
Thank you, Sigvald and Ida. Okay, just reading through a couple of questions here and trying to decide which one I want to go to next. I think we've hit the slightly spicy section of the questions here. So I'm just going to read this one out. So from feedback from the event just run, a new member raised a query as to why members in hats didn't interact or make themselves known. What would the candidates strive to do, not just for themselves, but also their traveling companions, to alleviate this impression?
JC, can you please pop that in the chat?
Yep. I'm doing that as the Juliana and Ibn Joel.
Interesting question. We obviously weren't at Tavernalia. We'd booked to go to Great Northern Wall well before we actually saw the advertisements for Tavernalia. But one of the things we saw up at Great Northern Fair was particularly B&B St Florian's. They run around in heraldic gear that basically screams, I am St Florian's. And part of our thinking would be, if we were B&B, we would have to do something very similar. We would actually have to be wearing heraldic type clothing and colouring that would scream, hey, this is us, we are the we are Baronage Rowaney. I don't, knowing Tig and Stina, I don't really know what's actually, pardon?
You said Tig.
I am so glad I am not the only person who has done that.
Tig and Taint Christiana. Interaction.
From the interaction side, it's like, yeah, I've seen them go around, but maybe it was just an off night for the pair of them. I really don't know. I also, as a peer, tend to wander around without any of my regalia on half the time, or my regalia is quite small. Because I get very sick of people doing, oh, they're a peer, I can't talk to them, I'm going to run away now. So we do, I certainly do tend to minimize the regalia stuff I wear, but that's the flip side of it, is if we were Baronage Rowaney, we'd be making an effort to actually sort of look the part, wearing the heraldry, so that people understood we were the representatives of the barony.
In addition to that, at festival, I'm pretty much known for being a driver. And it's not unusual for me to get in the car, drive out to the train station and have people go, oh, why is there a peer picking me up in their car? I like to interact with people, and whether or not I'm wearing potentially a pointy hat, wearing a collar, wearing any kind of guild livery, I like to interact. High tables are not my thing, but that's also another thing about it, is if you've got new people, you want to be welcoming to everybody, and it doesn't matter who you are, pointy hats or not. I'd like to have people talk to me. Why are they there? One of my jobs in my day job is find out why people are in my class. And again, it translates over. Doesn't matter who you are, why are they there, and be welcoming, inclusive. There's been too many events where I've seen people say, this is a private event, go away. And it just craps me to tears that these are potential members that we possibly losing because of some sort of exclusion criteria or exclusivity that doesn't preclude people coming in. So why pointy hats weren't making themselves known? Maybe they weren't wanting to wear them. Maybe they were busy doing other things. Who knows? But also maybe a class at the follow-up event on what does the pointy hat mean? What does the throne mean? An introduction to the SCA class. I took it, best thing I ever did. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much. Sigvald and Ida.
So we were at the event on Saturday, and I definitely did see Stig and Christiana wandering around and talking to people. I think there was a comment we heard. Christiana turned around and said, "Oh, I don't know that person sitting over there. I want to go and, you know, have a chat and just, you know, say hello." We definitely saw them making the rounds. So, I mean, it's hard because it's hard to talk to everyone. I mean, even at a smaller event, you know, it's making that time to talk to everyone that does take up a lot of energy. And, you know, there's only so many hours in an event, and especially if it's a feast and you're eating and there's other things going on, there's a court, you know, it is hard. One of the things that we would like to do is obviously approachability is one of the things that we would want to make ourselves as approachable as possible to everyone, to anyone, and having clear signals that we're approachable as much as possible. You know, one of the things I think we might have mentioned earlier is in one of the other sessions is, you know, this idea that, okay, well, maybe we are sitting at the high table, but, you know, you can, if we make it clear that you can come and talk to us, you know, bring us concerns or raise anything with us, you know, we will have, you know, the idea of holding court, but not like SCA court, but like come and talk to us, bring us things, sit in these chairs and talk to us. And that's a sign that, you know, come and talk to us. You know, we want to be able to do the rounds and talk to people as much as possible. In terms of any traveling companions with us, any household, I definitely want to give out this opinion that and the option of, okay, well, maybe you don't want to come and talk to, you know, the people wearing the pointy hats, because I understand that that might be a bit intimidating, especially if you're really new and you don't know how it works. But having household members as an alternate option to talk to, they can encourage people to come and talk to us if need be. But you know, it is hard, and it will be different. Like different people will want to see different things, different people will want to experience different things, and different people will be comfortable with different things, and trying to manage that and have time and be able to actually dedicate our energy to talking to people. Like that is hard, and definitely something to work towards. And not everyone's going to get it right all the time. You know, we're not always going to be able to clock this person's new, we don't know them, especially when it's busy.
Yeah, I really like the idea of, and I try and make it an attempt generally at events to, if I don't know a person, you know, just find one person every event that I haven't spoken to. I personally wasn't probably just great at that at Tavernalia, because we just driven up multiple hours that morning, including a screaming car, which was a challenge. But finding just simple things like finding, who is this new person? I don't recognize them. How are you? I think that all the candidates, that's something that we can just sort of step out and not talk to people, because that's the job.
And maybe if we're not personally able to engage with them for whatever reason, that someone that we know is engaging with them, so that there's no one who's at an event who's new, who maybe doesn't know very many people, is sitting there by themselves. and feeling like it's a private event and that they're not actually able to be engaged with it at all.
Thank you very much. Okay. Right, that might be. I lost where I was up to. Okay. Next one. There's been some discussion this evening about how we are obviously coming out of 2 years of pandemic, and so it's about starting up events again. What sort of ideas do the candidates have in regards to picking up in-person activities after COVID? Juliana and Angela.
Two things: keep it small, and things like bunch of classes and stuff like that where people can learn how to do stuff. That was one thing that we noticed that was really positive when we went down to Pullet Uni. There was a lot of people keen on learning new stuff because they'd been kind of stuck at home, not being able to do stuff and not being able to learn. And well, what are the point trying to learn stuff and not being able to work it out themselves?
Or bored with what they were doing and were looking for something new.
Yeah, but the idea is if we keep it small and keep it simple, it's easier things to run and it becomes a better training environment so that we can actually mentor people and help them understand how to run events and build up that knowledge about running events again that we've possibly lost, particularly if we only concentrate on running big events like festival or Yule Feast all the time. We're never going to get people trained up to do smaller through the use of smaller events if we're only ever running big stuff.
Build the small stuff and they will come.
Sigvald and Ida.
I think it's really important to sort of have that intermediate step, but the important thing for me is to remind people of what sort of we had and where we will go again. So you don't want to have major Yule and festival and, you know, Great Northern War and that kind of thing is all we do. But at the same time, you want to keep that, you want to get that spark of magic that isn't just weekly ANS or weekly fighter practice. So things like Bash in the Park, small events like Tavernalia, where you've got the simplicity and elegance that Ibn Jalal was speaking about, while still having that sort of spark of magic that is really why we do the SCA and we don't just, you know, spin and weave and do calligraphy in our own homes.
I think the other thing to keep in mind is that, you know, not only are we out of practice, but also things that people are looking for have changed. Communication, I think, is really important, and being able to communicate, you know, about what sort of safety measures are in place for COVID, options. You know, not everyone's going to be comfortable just diving straight out into an event that they don't really know a lot about. You know, they don't know how many people are going to be there or how many people that it's capped at. You know, like there might be people who are happy to go to an event that's got 50 people, but 100, you know, straight off the bat seems like a lot. So if they know what to expect, you know, in terms of numbers and what the, you know, the current COVID rules are at that location, because I know that it's different, you know, across different places. And if you're traveling to places, that might be a bit hard to keep track of. And it's a lot of energy to do that sort of research yourself and to make it, you know, as easy as possible to find all the information that you want to feel comfortable going to events again. I think that's important as well. So
sort of having that small to medium events that we can train up people and capture that spark of imagination that is what the SEA is all about, and arming people with information so they're safe and comfortable.
And just
with it.
understanding that also not everyone's going to be able to or feel comfortable going to in-person events, you know, and so I think there will be a long transition period where, you know, there's still online events, you know, separate or related to, you know, it will be a lot of trial and error, I think, of figuring out what is working, what's not working, moving forward.
Thank you very much. I suppose this next question is sort of makes for a good follow-on or supplementary question to that, which is that currently Stowe doesn't have a regular meeting place. And given what property prices are like in Sydney, hall hire prices are also quite high, which makes the financial viability of Stowe getting something in the short term quite difficult. For both sets of candidates, can you see a way forward for Stowe as we do start to open up and people return to in-person events? Sigvald and Eva.
So one of the things that I know Sigvald's been, you know, talking to people in Stowe about, you know, this return to doing things in person. And one of the things discussed was, you know, there's this focus that it has to be, you know, weekly. You know, there's a weekly fighter practice and things like that, or a weekly arts and sciences. And you know, while there's this transition period and acknowledging that, you know, housing prices are horrendous and rent is horrendous and space is hard to come by, that maybe easing that pressure off of, you know, it has to be a space that's available every week and into maybe it's monthly, maybe it's fortnightly. You know, there's not so much of a pressure, there's less of a financial burden, especially while people are in that transition phase. You know, maybe you're not having so many people turn up in person because more people are comfortable doing it online. And as that builds up, you know, you can reassess, but diving straight into, oh, we have to pay exorbitant prices to have a space every week that maybe not very many people are going to turn up to. Again, it'll be trial and error of finding out what works. But that's just something that I know has been discussed.
And that's sort of starting with the intermittent events, not even, you know, monthly, but there's Tavernalia, and then in a little bit of time there's Bash in the Park, where you have intermittent events to grow the populace to then start getting into those kind of more serious rental discussions. But it's, again, we you know, I think both candidates mentioned it a few times, is sort of build it first and then they will come.
Thank you. Juliana and Evan Jalal.
From the build it side too, what's wrong with the park? Honestly, what's wrong with the park? Using a park on a Sunday. The Barony did this for years and years and years and years and years. Stowe did it when they started. Dismal Fogs did it when every group I know when they started weren't relying on halls. They were relying on parks on a weekend as their communal gathering area. It also has the advantage that a lot of parks, you can run your heavy training and the heavies aren't going to be worried about, are they going to destroy the floor when they go to their knees? It just becomes, from a cost perspective, it just becomes easier.
Yep.
And it really does become you can just rebuild, getting people used to it, and away it goes. And sure, yeah, you might have weeks where you lose it to the weather. But there are parks with pavilions where you can have people in the shade in a pavilion while the fighters and the fencers are out doing their stuff. So, but yeah, but if you if you see this as a ongoing, oh, we can't ever do that because of the weather, it will never happen.
Yeah.
You just have to start, and that getting the start going builds the momentum.
In addition to that, Stowe used to meet at I think it was the Toongabbie Scout Hall, and until just now, I wasn't actually aware that they weren't meeting there anymore, to be honest. We would need to have a discussion with Matthias about the state of that, and if there was any possibility of potentially going back and what the requirements would be, or something similar. But that's something that it's not a solution we could provide here, but it's definitely a good thing that needs to be done. And there's something to work towards, because going outside in 7 degrees is a hell of a lot more pleasant than going outside in -3, which it was in Canberra on Sunday. So, but that's a good reason to wear your winter woolies, right?
I often argue armored combat is a winter sport for exactly that reason.
I say the same for fencing.
Okay. Next one. We are always looking to Baron and Baroness to be a source of inspiration. How are you planning to set the tone, and how do you see yourselves in terms of a source of inspiration? I'll just quickly jump to Matthias, who has his hand up there, whilst the candidates ponder the question.
Just wanting to backtrack and sort of fill in about the Toongabbie Scout Hall and situation there. So coming out of the first round of lockdown, the Scout Hall was being used by one of the branches of the Scouts in there. We were given option to go back there, but it was being drawn out longer and longer because they hadn't organised alternate plans for the group that was temporarily occupying our time. To which we then, went back into lockdown again, which was unfortunate. Over the course of a few meetings, I did put it to the group to gauge interest and attendance, having worked out the feasibility and minimum numbers required for us to make our monthly commitment to the hall, and what we would have to do in order to cover it. And as during the last 3 years, there have been no major events run, no public demos, which financially lead back into the group. Stowe wasn't in the position financially to offset, to put the money forward for a long-term contract of hall hire, when we've just not seen, basically, people still predominantly have their heads down and are in a COVID mentality, and whilst events are starting to happen, we're also seeing a deficit in numbers of people who are confident enough to return back to any sort of group environment, even on a small scale when we've run a few park gatherings and such. So for Stowe to be looking at the financial outlay for a hall, there would need to be a sort of an upfront commitment from a number of key parties to drive recruitment or more drive attendance again, which post-COVID is a challenge, as a lot of us have found mundanities to fill the cracks in time that was previously allocated. So moving forward, if the candidates do have any suggestions or want to talk to me about that, please, reach out. At present, our physical hall situation is more contingent on seeing bodies and bums and chairs again in order for us to actually be able to make the financial gamble and investment moving forward. And personally, I would like to see a lot more face-to-face activities happening again. But also, for me personally, I am very tired and work has not been conducive to this. And so, as essential to the populace, I am still very much heart and hand asking people, this is your group as well as mine. I do not want to be the benevolent dictator. So if you want to run things, if you want to do things, please, I will support in any way I can. I'll even steward and do paperwork for stuff. I just need the bodies to help. So thank you.
Thanks, Matthias. Okay. So looking to the B&B to be a source of inspiration. Who would like to go first? Sigvald and Ida would like to go first.
So I think one of the things that we find very important, even aside from, this process and, potentially being B&B, is sort of leading by example. We want to be the sort of people that people see doing things, helping however that might be, whether that's running events, whether that's helping, being a general body to carry and lift and clean and help in the kitchen. We want people to see us and know that they can do that too. And doing that sort of leading by example, extending that through not just service, but trying new arts and sciences, being involved in combat, turning up at demos, those sorts of things. I think that's very important to us, that, if we're going to be an inspiration, we want to be an inspiration to people to help and to be involved and to try things, even if they've never done that sort of thing before. I'll certainly be trying things that I've never done before. I do that a lot in the SCA and it's great fun. And that's the sort of example that we would wanting to be setting for people as much as possible.
The other sort of role when it comes to that sort of question around inspiration is sort of theatre and that drive to have the SCA as a narrative setting is really important. I think of the four of us, shenanigans is most certainly Mistress Juliana's prime domain. But having those kind of things, working with members of the populace, working with other groups to how can we do something that's not just, we've had 3 years where I don't think we've really declared war on anyone. How can we have a group tied together as a shared theatrical experience? And that's something that I really want to reach out to and work with other groups. And there are some small schemes afoot, whether or not, regardless of the result of this process, but so it's sort of being an inspiration for people in terms of showing the way forward and showing that you can do that too, as well as drawing into that theatre and narrative.
And joy.
Yeah. Joy is what the SCA is.
Thank you, Siggy and Ida. Juliana and Evangela.
Shenanigator. I like it. Build it and I'm just going to go back to the build it and they will come. Stowe is, how many people are in Stowe these days? The numbers are dwindling. The question is, what can we do to help the ideas and the people that are already working so hard in Stowe. You guys know the group better than we do, since we are Rowaney Central. And the B&B is not just a figurehead role, it is a roll your sleeves up and dig in when the going gets tough. And for Stowe, I think the going has gotten quite tough. So, 12 hours in the kitchen doing dishes, if as potential Baroness I have to do that, that's what I'll do. What can we do to help you grow your group with your ideas, your plans? Where do you want to see your group? What would you like to get out of your group? We would like to see Stowe grow, and be a well-rounded, well-supported, well-educated group of people. I'm not sure there are many knights or peers out there, and maybe assisting some of those very talented people out there into those roles eventually could be the way to go. The world is your oyster. What can we do to help you?
Yeah, it's also a case of, it's our idea behind doing this job was, we want to be able to say to people, what do you want to do? Where do you want to get to? How can we help you get there? That was really what was driving it behind us, because we've gotten so much from the SCA over however many years it's been. We see this as our chance to give back, to be that source, that one person that can help someone actually understand what they want to do and move forward and have fun. Because we wouldn't still be doing this after decades if it wasn't fun.
I'd just like to see Stowe grow into the amazing group I know it is.
Thank you very much. Okay, as we are rapidly approaching the hour-and-a-half mark, I think we might wrap things up there for this evening. I would like to thank the candidates who have made the time to come to each of these town hall meetings, both in person and online. I'd like to thank Stig and Christiana for their attendance as well. And I would like to thank everyone from Stowe who came out tonight to ask questions and get their best understanding of where the candidates stand on the various topics that they brought up tonight. I see Stig has his hand up, so I'll just quickly throw to him.
Just a couple of quick housekeeping things while we're still recording. We haven't had Wolfsidge on this evening. He's been, I believe, having technology fails. He's been trying to get into the meeting, but something's not working. In any case, he sends his apologies, and he's been trying, and Christiana's been trying to assist him. In any case, the other bit, right? Oh yes, with that Tavernalia perception about people in pointy hats and interaction. I didn't comment on that earlier, as the discussion here is about the candidates. But yeah, as with any sort of feedback like that, I always take it as useful. And so thank you for whoever's passed that on. That's all I had.
Alrighty, I will wrap it there. Thank you, everybody. Don't forget to click like and subscribe and the little bell to make sure you get all the notifications on the Rowaney Central YouTube channel. Get my monetization up. One day I might actually get it monetized, and then we can, I'll make sure any funds for that go into the baronial coffers. Thank you very much, everybody. I will now stop the recording.